Hi, everybody. I'm Kevin Falvey, editor-in-chief of Boating Magazine, and this is Boating Roundtable. We're here today with John Dorton, CEO of Invincible Boat Company, and Pete Melvin, head naval architect and CEO of Melvin and Morelli. Pete's coming to us from California. John's coming to us from Florida. Joining me today is Jim Hendricks, our West Coast editor, also in California, and I'm coming to you from Long Island, New York. Gentlemen, welcome to Boating Roundtable.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Hey, I'm going to have Jim lead this discussion. He's been on your boats more than I have and is well schooled in what Invincible and similar boats have to offer. Jim, kick off the discussion.
Thanks, Kevin, and welcome, John. Welcome, Pete. Glad to have you here. Kevin's right. I've spent a lot of time on Invincible boats, not only the monohulls, but the cat hulls in particular. More recently, we went all the way out to the Dry Tortugas aboard the 40 Cat, and we went sail fishing on one of the cats as well. So I've spent a lot of time fishing, running on those boats, and I tell you, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. They've made me a believer. Let's start off by talking a little bit about the history of Invincible multi-hull boats, aka catamarans or cats, and how you approached this particular market segment.
Yeah, thanks. So this will be our fifth model year of cats. We've been working on this since about 2015, 2016, back in development phase. You know, cats have intrigued manufacturers for years. One of the reasons is it's such a nice, wide fishing platform. There were some inherent issues with cats as far as handling that were less desirable than monohulls. And so a lot of people shied away from it. And then we found Pete and his team, and they came up with an amazing solution to get a cat to act like a monohull without giving up the cat characteristics of fishability and that nice steady platform that we have. And efficiency has been amazing in that. So once we found the solution, we were full steam ahead and continued to. As a matter of fact, we just this last week launched the new 33 Cat. That's going to be a new one in our lineup. So we're getting pretty aggressive now with our cat lines from 33, 35, 37, 40, and now 46.
Wow, that's impressive. That's impressive. There's been a surge recently in, it seems to me, in the development of large power cats. You know, your 46 is a great example. What are some of the factors that have really prompted this surge in big power cats?
Well, it's hard to hate them. They're such a nice platform. They're much more efficient than traditional boats of that size. You can take, in our case, a 46-foot cat. It's going to be competitive as in fishing space with the 50-plus foot monohulls. What we're seeing, though, a lot of are guys coming out of big diesel sport fish boats, Vikings and Hatterses and Bertrams and the like that big platform. They like the big beam, but they also like the fact that it's 2 to 3 times faster than their big diesels, and you don't need a captain, so the operating cost goes way down. So we're seeing a lot of migration into our segment for that, and they're coming straight into cats as opposed to monohulls.
Would the development of the big cats been possible prior to the development of big, powerful outboards, or is that something that's kind of really, spurred this development?
That's a great point. Yeah, without the big power outboards and the just the reliability and the efficiency of them, yeah, you wouldn't have even the big monohull market like we currently do.
Right. And to be clear, almost all of the cats now seem to be, there are a few exceptions, but almost all of the big power cats now are outboard powered.
Yes. There's no way to replace that performance and efficiency that gives you, and the trimmability of the outdrive. It changes your day on the water.
Let me ask you something. We can back up just to the previous statement. You have the owners of these big sport fish boats coming to your boats. Now, you offer V-hulls, yeah?
Sure, absolutely.
Do they walk in the door and go, John, I want a faster boat. My captain's retiring. I want to run it myself. Do they come in looking for a cat, or do they end up saying, hey, try this, and they go, wow, I'm sold? I mean, how does it work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we see both. We see a lot of guys are just so monohull focused they don't like the looks of the cats in the past, and they don't maybe like some of the performance features. Then they get out with a friend in a cat, and all of a sudden they kind of find themselves saying, wow, those are pretty nice. So they, like I said a minute ago, they're hard to hate. I was an old monohull guy myself for a long time, being back in Hydro Sports and And even coming to Invincible is like, well, I've got to learn to love these cats. And sure enough, they offer such great features. I know my wife, when she goes out with us, she's happier in there. Everybody gets more room to move around. So they provide a great alternative. So I think the guys coming out of the big sport fish boats are more interested in that big beam because that's what they're used to.
Right.
So that's why they look to those. And then we have a lot of out migration from other folks, monohulls into our catamarans because, gosh, they're sporty, they're good looking, and they solve all your problems. You just have to be open-minded enough to get out and demo one in many cases.
Sure. I want to direct a question to Pete here about the design elements of a cat, a power cat. Pete, you and I have spent some time together back in the early 90s actually testing some smaller cats. I remember we did one out of Long Beach that was a kind of an experimental craft that you guys were developing. And there was a surge in power cats for fishing at that particular time, but it seemed to die off. They were smaller boats. They weren't the large ones that we have today. It seemed to kind of surge and then die off. And now we've seen a resurgence here in the larger power cats and growing popularity of those models. What are some of the design elements that you've been able to incorporate that you would credit for this resurgence?
Yeah, a few things. Some of those early boats that we did, and like you said, there was a surge in power cats in the early to mid 90s, maybe even late 80s, where people started to realize the benefits of the boats, but they're still fairly crude. A lot of the builders honestly were just doing stuff in the back lot and coming up with a design. Sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. So the boats, and honestly, they didn't look very good. And it's taken a while for I think designers, builders to learn how to make these boats look better. I think that's been a big part of it. But the hull shapes back in that time, you could tell that there was definitely some benefits to a power catamaran. But 30 years on here, we've learned a lot about not just us, but the whole design building community and power catamarans has learned a lot about these boats and have improved them quite a bit. Like you said, most of the boats at that time, a 25 footer was a pretty big center console power cat at that time, and slowly they've gotten larger. And I think that the boats, when they get larger, you really feel the benefits, come into play with the larger outboards now with stepped hulls, getting the amazing speed and fuel economy. So it's there's several pieces of that come together to make something that we didn't no one had created back 20, 30 years ago that have led to these developments. The shapes we design now are very different from what we had in the early 90s, and that's been a slow evolution.
Can you give an example, maybe a layman's type example for our audience, like of something that they could say, oh, I get that, I can visualize that?
Sure. The boats we're developing, I'd say 20, 30 years ago, were much slower. The power was much lower. People weren't interested in going 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. People were really interested in I think the smooth ride was the initial selling point.
Right.
And, in a 20, 25 foot center console out in the ocean, we all know it's hard to do over, say, 30 miles an hour. You just start getting beat up. So
25. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, it's you start getting your teeth beat up. The power catamarans were definitely better than the monohulls, but still, it's a small boat and you start coming out of the water and slamming down. So, the power was moderate. The hulls were mainly symmetrical and sort of rounded in order to, because, that's a good shape for moderate speeds. You get very good fuel economy, that sort of thing. There was a big difference at that time, say, between what Glacier Bay was producing, which were sort of deep displacement hulls that had very good efficiency in the, 15 to 20 mile an hour range, versus the planing catamarans were just kind of coming into play, where they would go faster. So that was a trend that was developing, and the planing cats, handled much better as well. Just more of a sort of firmer sports car ride than a mushy, Cadillac ride.
Speaking of the ride, one of the elements that I've discovered when spending time on the Invincible Cats is, maybe I'm not describing it correctly, but it seems like the deceleration as the boat comes off of a wave there is no deceleration in the Cat. I mean, or if there is, it's minimal versus a monohull where you definitely have some deceleration, which creates kind of the pounding and the falling forward as you come off of a wave. When we've ridden on those Cats, the boat just kind of, it drops smoothly and comfortably as it comes off of a wave. How is that achieved in the design?
Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, inherently, a catamaran's can be smoother riding because the individual hulls are just narrower, and intuitively you can see that just a narrower, finer hull is not going to pound as hard. But you also have the tunnel down between the hulls, and that gets pressurized with a mix of air and spray. So it's a cushioning effect as the boat comes back down. And the other part of it is the balance of the boat. As the boat comes out of the water and, pitches and heaves, which is the vertical motion, the placement of the center of gravity relative to the hull is important to minimize the motions. So it's a combination of numerous things.
Well, we all know all boats are a compromise of one sort or another. There is no perfect boat that does everything, of course. So I have to ask, we've talked about a lot of the advantages of Cats. Are there, and what are the disadvantages that you might describe about a Cat?
Yeah, I'd say, interior wise, it's, since you have the tunnel down the center, there's no, you can't put a cabin down in the middle, but we're slowly figuring out ways to work around that offer, I'd say, fairly equivalent accommodations. And that's been more of a recent thing, I think. You see full width cabin and pilot house power cast that work pretty well, where you can put a berth up on that flat. But we're starting to learn how to create some headroom in, say, center console, the larger center console boats, for instance. I think you'll be seeing some more of that.
Nice.
And then also, there's just more surface area, and the Cats cost a little bit more to build for the same, for the same length. But as John was explaining, you actually get more boat than if you're comparing it to a monohull. So when you start thinking about it that way, it's sort of blurred. It's not like a clear winner there.
Sure. Well, okay. On that note, I'm going to toss it over to John again. When you're shopping for a multi-hull boat, a Cat, what are some of the key elements to look for when you're comparing model to models?
I think there's very few Cat manufacturers that have actually figured out the styling and figured out the performance piece. And that's where Pete's been such a huge help. There's other Cats that I've run today that are popular Cats that I wouldn't particularly have. I mean, there was, if you didn't solve the problems with the Cats, it's not going to be a great solution for everybody. A lot of them don't turn well. They sneeze when the water gets caught up into that tunnel. Yeah. That's not delightful. So, I don't know that I'd give a lot of credit to a lot of them that are out there right now. Mm-hmm. We have a very aggressive demo program, so we want to get people out on the water and check. Right now, largely people are actually shopping our Cats versus other monos because they're just not as impressed with the other Cat teams. One of the things kind of interesting, myself and Scott Wood, who's the head designer here, were the guys that part of the team that brought out pickle forks that are now so big in the weight business. And the reason we did a pickle fork was to widen that bow out, but we wanted to get that nice profile. So from the side of the boat, it didn't look like a pickle fork. It looked like a V-hull. And so that's what we're doing really with these Cats right now. Just climbed off the 46, and from the side, a guy at the dock said, "Man, that's a beautiful boat." And he walks and goes, "It's a Cat." He was shocked. So that's that silhouette that we're trying to achieve. And I think that's where Pete would agree, working with Scott, that he's been able to do that. So, and the other point that he brought up generally if someone's looking at a mono, if they're looking, let's say at a 36 mono, they really need to be looking at our 33 cat. I mean, there's a major difference. And so when you do that, all of a sudden the cat's very competitive in price. For the same.
So for the extra beam, you're getting equivalent cockpit. I mean, it's a general statement. You're not.
Yes. Yeah. Even at the boat show, I think you guys were there last year. We had a 36 cat next to a 35 cat next to a 36 mono, and the 36 mono looked quite a bit smaller. So
aesthetics certainly play a part in the boat buying process. A boat doesn't look like we were talking about that this morning. A boat doesn't look good to you. You're probably not going to buy it for all its functionality. You probably won't like it.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's talk a little bit about the asymmetrical hull design of the Invincible cats. When I first heard that, I thought, oh, that means the sponsons are different sizes, but that's not what it means at all. Can you explain it?
Yeah, it's been an evolution. Like I was explaining earlier, we started out with symmetrical hull cats, and then we designed a few asymmetrical hull cats. At that time, we were kind of segregated the two. The symmetrical hull cats were for the slower boats where ride was critical, because generally the symmetrical hull boats have a better ride than, say, a pure asymmetrical hull cat, say like an offshore racing boat that's like a deep V, split apart with a rectangular straight tunnel down the middle.
Right.
So at that time we're okay. Well, if you really want a very high speed boat, then you go for the full tunnel boat with a full asymmetric design, and those are also support a lot aerodynamically, because they go 80, 90, 100 miles an hour plus, and you get a lot of that aerodynamic lift. And if you're going slower, then you're not getting that benefit anyway. So you might as well just use the symmetric hull. But over time, we developed this. We call a semi-asymmetrical shape, which is what current evolution of that is what we're using on the Invincible boats. And so we developed that shape over time, where it has, especially for these kind of boats, where they're not offshore racing boats, but they're not the old sort of 20 mile per hour boats either. It's something in the middle, and they have to actually work over a much wider range now. They have to work well when you're trolling. They have to work well when you're going, 25 miles an hour out in the ocean in big waves, but they also need to go 80 miles an hour, and work efficiently at those speeds. So it's actually a very broad, range of operating conditions. Also the ability to bank into turns, or at least not lean outboard, is important. That handling characteristic. Not only does the semi-asymmetric hull not lean outboard, but it also has much better, grip and certainty to the turn. Kind of locks into a turn and goes through the turn. Jim, you've been on the boats. Maybe you can attest to that. But some of the other catamarans, they'll kind of wobble and lean out and lean in, or they feel a little
so it's a more confident feel at the helm. I mean, if you run boats, you could feel like I'm in this turn, I'm good, and then you're saying that feeling of say it ain't right. Maybe I want to back off the throttle. I don't know. I'm unsure of what this boat's going to do.
Exactly. Yes. So the certainty and stability, I guess, in the turns is what we're going for. So we kind of developed that shape over time. And with the Invincible, the next big leap was to put steps on that shape, because they wanted to put more power, go faster. That was their clientele. It was been fantastic working with them. They allowed us to use our high-end design tools to figure that out. And now we've got what we think is the best performing boat out there, but also it has the best handling of the that sort of range of boats.
What kind of speed are we talking about out of some of these? I know today, John, you were on the 46, and you talked about
46 is the new model?
Yeah. 46 is the new one, 46 footer. We were at pretty comfortably up to 78.1. and we think there was a little more room in our legs there that we weren't able to squeeze out before we started coming up on a manatee zone. But all of these boats will put bugs in your teeth. They're really a lot of fun. And as much as anything, they're a good 10 to 15 miles an hour better cruising speed out in seas as well than the most competitive monohulls. So, not that you're always running 80 miles an hour, but it's a big difference between running sort of 45, 50 versus 30, 35 out in, 4-footers.
Right.
I mean, that makes a huge difference in how quick you can outrun a storm when you get home. Make sure, your spouse isn't mad because you've been out all day. And so, our whole thing is fish more and search less. And that's, we're trying to get people out to the grounds quickly. Miami's not such an issue, but we sell a lot of boats up in the Gulf. Those guys are running, 3, 4 hours, 5 hours in monos and sport fish, and we're out there in 2 and back in 2, and it changes your day.
Yeah, it's not an overnighter anymore; it's a day trip.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I know. In the Gulf, we've had to run 120 miles out just to find the rip line.
Yeah,
and it's a long ride out and a long ride back. We also, to demonstrate the advantages with the 40 cat. When we did a trip to the Dry Tortugas, normally an overnight trip. You're over there, you're fishing, you spend the night, you fish a little bit, and you have to come home. On that trip, we were at the Dry Tortugas in less than an hour.
Yeah.
That's amazing. From Key West, yes, from Key West. Yeah. Normally that's, and we were back in the same time. So it gave us a ton of fishing time over there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also they're nice, strong boats because you have so many compound curves in the design. And so it's just a boat that's at home in big seas. Necessarily intend to go out in big seas, but sometimes Mother Nature turns a flat day into a sporty day, and you got to deal with it. And so that's a boat that gives you guys a lot of confidence.
Yeah, one of the big advantages too of the design is that the sponsons allow for huge fish lockers.
Yeah.
They're almost too big. It's like you look in there and go, well, you didn't fill it up.
Yeah, exactly. All of a sudden your fish don't look so big. Right. But no, there's plenty of room in there. But if you take a big long trip, you can definitely bring some meat home in them.
Yep.
So guys, the clock is ticking. We're not rushing off just yet. But Jim, is there any more questions, or Pete or John, anything else that you haven't said that you'd like to get across to our audience? It'd be great to do it now.
Yeah, no, I just would encourage, if you have a chance, to get out and try one of our cats. We're actually in the process of putting together a cat course, if you will, like a road course, just to show how our boat performs versus others out there. And I think you could be a convert. I certainly have been. There's just so much great features with the cat that's just comfortable for everyone. And I think it's good for our sport. They're more efficient, and you can, again, be out there and back quicker. So it was less time out running, and I think that's important overall too. So appreciate you guys highlighting this. I know Boating Magazine had a nice feature with one of our 37s. I forgot that was something like a 1,100 mile trip or something of that nature. With
right.
That's right.
Team.
Bahamas. Yeah.
Yeah, on the Bahamas. So and things got a little nasty there as far as the weather. So
and our crew was impressed. There were a lot of people indoctrinated in cats, experienced boaters, but non-cat people on that, to use a word, forgive me, on that trip, and they were duly impressed when they returned.
Well, thanks. And it's we're staying true to our brand. We're a very serious boat. We're for people serious about their fishing and about their diving and about their day on the water. And it's everything you need, nothing you don't kind of a boat. And it's sort of the ultimate fishing and diving tool. So appreciate you guys covering this and having us on.
So, Pete Melvin, John Dorton, thanks for joining us today. Folks, you can look for the website information for both Melvin and Morelli and for Invincible Boat Company at the end of this video. Also in the comment section on YouTube right below. We'll print them there. Tune in next time for Boating Roundtable.
Thanks,
guys.
Yeah.
Bye.